Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy, David. Holy moly, David. It is a Tuesday. It's September 12th. It's the day after September 11th. And I got all of my September 11th uh, revisiting of September 11th taken care of. And I'm fulfilled. I filled up with my September 11th remembrances.
That's good to hear. Um, and last week we were kind of hyping the finals day. We were leading up to it. You were really discussing the swell and the direction and all of that and how it was going to play out. The event ran on Saturday, and lots of energy, lots of swell, plenty of surf on tap. What were your thoughts on the direction and the day that they chose to run?
Well, I have some thoughts. First of all, I was stoked on the decision to run. I think it was the right decision for that day. And let me say congrats to Felipe and to Carolyn Marks, our new WSL World Champions for 2023. They're both deserved their victories. They both surfed with precision and with a determination and a focus that we demand of our champions. So well done. But I will state this that lower trestles is a kid's wave. Every day, kids and old men are surfing at lower trestles. In fact, right now, there's a bunch of kids and a bunch of old men at lower trestles. And you know where kids and old men don't surf? 10-foot Puerto Escondido, 8-foot Pipeline, and 8 to 10-foot Candui left. And what we witnessed on Saturday was the equivalent of putting, David, and this is your great analogy, NASCAR drivers on a go-kart track. And I'm over watching three to the beach surfing determine our world champions. I demand the best surfers in the world face
Coming
down waves
in
of
hot
consequences
right
to
out of
determine.
the gates.
I demand, let me restate this. I demand that the best surfers in the world face down waves of consequences to determine who becomes the world champion. I demand man versus nature, that ideal, be the number one factor determining our world champions. And you know who else should be demanding that? The WCT surfers themselves, David. It seems that the WSL is open to feedback, and now is the time. The WCT surfers need to speak up. I feel like a majority of the surfing public feels the way that you and I do. And it's time for the WCT surfers to wave the flag. We need waves of consequence. The lower trestles thing, it's over.
Impassioned, fiery, right out of the gates. Did you sit down and write this on Saturday evening after viewing it? Because that felt like it was inspired.
Well, this is easy to write. You and I have been kind of preaching this for a while, and I just had to kind of nail it down in 4 or 5 bullet points. And I think I did.
You did, for sure. So, totally agree with everything you said and think that the venue has a relative spot on tour, but definitely not as the final event of the season. Definitely not to crown a world champ in one day. All of that, 100% true.
Yeah, totally agree. We love the
Well,
wave. I actually thought that they did a good job of putting on an event.
well,
It has
okay,
nothing
so
to do with it. Yeah.
that's the other thing is I love the format. Like the event was thrilling. The day was thrilling. The leading into the event, you and I discussing it last week, there's a bunch of storylines that we can isolate and pinpoint because there's only 5 surfers on either side. Whereas going into a bloated normal event and there's 32 surfers, we're kind of just, we throw our hands up and we're like, I don't know, let's wait and see what develops, I guess. I'm not really sure who's going to match up or how they're even seated to match up. With this, we know what's what. We have storylines. We know his style versus his style. And we know how that's going to, and then the day of, it's very engaging for all of those same reasons. And the fact that it starts in the morning and ends in the afternoon, also very thrilling. Gives you a reason to keep watching throughout the course of the day. So while I love the format, it doesn't make sense to do this as the final event, and it's so dissimilar than the rest of the season. But what I think they have identified is this format actually is more engaging than the rest of the season. So this should be the format that we are implementing throughout the year. The question would be, how do you determine which 5 surfers surf at each event? And I mean, maybe there's a version of somewhere in between that we can kind of implement, maybe 12 or 16 surfers in a similar format, Or maybe there's a very robust challenger series and the top 5 surfers from any given, I don't know, period of time then go surf at the marquee event where it is this kind of a format. But what I do know is this was a thrilling day of surfing. Even though, it wasn't world class surf like you're talking about, the format still has value for sure.
Yeah, and the performances were world class. Specifically, I thought Ethan Ewing was next level,
I mean,
and of course Felipe Toledo was himself, which is he's unstoppable at 5 foot trestles. But again,
well,
it's sort of a bore fest.
yeah, we will. I do want to discuss each of the surfers and their performances kind of in detail, so we will go into that. But just as an overview, Felipe Toledo leveled up. Ethan Ewing, like you were saying, is the highlight surfer of the event for me, almost more than the world champs. Like the surfing that he was doing was the most progressive surfing we saw, even though it was on rail and not going to the air. And I almost cringe when commentators see somebody do a moderate air reverse and keep referring to that as progressive, because we've been seeing that since Christian Fletcher in the 80s. It's no longer progressive. But what Ethan Ewing was doing, despite the fact that it was on the face of the wave and on rail, and we've seen that for 40 years, that was progressive. That was the best version of it that we had ever seen, with the most power and the most precision, getting the most torque, getting the most rotation, covering the largest area of ground all at once. So that was radical. But watching his trajectory throughout the day, which none of us saw coming because he was coming off of injury, so that created a great storyline. Watching that happen, I was also knowing in the back of my head, and I even texted friends about it, was like, Felipe is salivating. Felipe isn't sitting there quaking in his boots. He is going, hell yes, I am now going to level up. And so I knew that in the final there would be that clash. And ultimately, the clash was Felipe incorporating airs, doing similar kind of intense rail surfing on a first opening turn or whatever, and then comboing it up by going to the air, which created a point of difference. And he undeniably was, even though we think about Ethan that day, Felipe outsurfed Ethan in both those two final
Yeah.
heats.
Yeah. One of the things that I think Peter Mel said, which I thought was fascinating, or I don't know if fascinating, but it was just spot on about Ethan's surfing, was that Ethan's surfing, he holds his speed through the turns. And I think what Peter said was that, look, inevitably when you do a turn, you're washing off speed. That's what you're doing. You're washing off speed. And Ethan, and I think Felipe too, by the way, both have this ability to do that big, massive turn, but keep the speed flowing through the turn. There's not like a point of slowdown where now I need to set at the bottom, do a fading bottom turn to regain some speed off the top. So I think that was a really well thought out and just a smart judgment that Peter made, that these guys are keeping their speed through the turn. They're not washing off as much speed as the other competitors, which sometimes seem a little bit boggy
Yeah.
or a little bit slow. And it's because they are relative to those two.
Even if they're not bogging and slow, they'll throw all their energy into a turn and kind of complete the turn and have like I don't know, even a split second of satisfaction and acceptance that they completed that turn before they stand upright, look for the next section, and then go into the next bottom turn. There's that kind of, there's a complete turn. Now we're going to move on to the next. Whereas the
Yeah.
Ethan thing, it's all fluid, one motion all the way to the end of the ride.
Yeah. The transitions are all just part of the turns.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
Caroline Marks is the other champ on the women's side, and this marks the first American world champ since ... Can you think of when the last American world champ was, either on the men or the women's side?
Well, it's
Obviously not.
Carissa Moore.
Well, not counting Hawaii.
Oh, um, I guess Kelly.
Correct. Kelly in 2011 was the last
Wow.
American mainland world champ. So that would have been 12 years ago. But on the women's side, Lisa Anderson in 1997, also from Florida, as Caroline Marks. So 26 years since we've had an American female world champ.
Wow, that's interesting. A mainland American world champ.
Mainland.
I wonder how Carissa and John feel about that. I wonder if they feel like, hey man, I'm the US champ, or if they're like, cool, yeah, that's absolutely right. I'm actually Hawaiian.
I think I have a feeling they have great pride in the fact that Hawaii is designated differently from America.
Except in the Olympics.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, only in surfing it's designated as different, but yeah. So huge congratulations to Caroline Marks, and an incredible performance, and really was the surfer of the day on the women's side. And that's a huge accomplishment for her. Let's talk a little bit about Carissa more. I'm not sure where to begin the conversation, but I guess we'll start here, which is, this is the second year in a row that Carissa Moore ended the season with the most points, and actually ended after finals day with the most points. 2 seasons in a row, she has the most points after the finals event, and still isn't the world champ. She's in second place here. What are your thoughts on this kind of mathematic issue?
I mean, it's kind of, part of me is like, oh look, this is the format that everybody's dealt the same hand with here, and so you just kind of got to do it. I guess my thought is always like, if it was held at 8-foot pipeline, Carissa would be the champion.
Yeah.
You know,
well, if
I mean,
it was
somebody's going to give her a run, maybe Caitlin Simmers, but of those 5 women, you know, this kind of speaks to what I initially brought up at the beginning of the segment, that this is a shitty spot to determine a world champion.
Yeah. See, I think it's more than that. You said everybody's dealt the same cards, you know, so it is what it is, but that's not really true. Carissa, the number one surfers, are dealt a different card. They've done all of the work throughout the season. And like I said, mathematically, she is still the number one surfer in the world at the end of this event, even. So I think Carissa can't be to blame, even though her surfing, she got out surfed that day. The format is to blame. The people at the WSL who designed this are to blame here. I mean, and it's more than just an event. It should be said that in any other iteration of professional surfing up until they've devised this plan, Carissa Moore would have 7 world titles at this point to go with her Olympic gold medal. That's ultimately the performances that she's put in through the season. She's earned 5 legitimate titles, and then the last 2 that she didn't actually quite win on finals day, she did all the work throughout the course of the season to have accrued the number 1 points. And even ended after, like I said, finals day with the most points. Caroline Marks, if you look at the points after she won this event, it's the 3rd place after Carissa and Tyler. So it's, like I said, it's beyond.
Do that though? I don't think they do that though. They don't add these points up to your total points, do they? Does the WSL do that, or is that something you just did? You just like added 10,000 points to Caroline Marks' total or something?
Oh no, I just went and looked at where the total number of points are with the rankings right now. So maybe you're right. Maybe they didn't add it.
I don't think they do, because it would give a huge advantage to the number 1 seeded surfer.
What do you mean?
Well, if you're the number 1 seed, you're guaranteed 1st or 2nd place.
Well, they don't. My point is they add the points. It's just they don't push them into first position. Like it shows Carissa sitting in 2nd with more points than Caroline.
Oh,
last year Felipe Toledo went into this event with 10,000 points more than 2nd place. So even if 2nd won the 10,000, he was still going to be in 1st. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think that, look, what I said earlier, this is the format. Like,
it's a failed format. It's undeniably a failed format, though. I mean,
well, you
look,
just told me you like this format, that you're into it, and that you want to see it go down throughout the course of the next season.
It needs to be worked. I liked the structure of the event for excitement and storyline following and all that sort of stuff, but it still needs to be worked. And I think there are solutions here, by the way.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you those solutions before we get into the actual surfing of the day. There needs to be a mathematical shot to compete at finals day. So like I said, if you are 10,000 point difference, you can't get into finals day. And so maybe that means there's only 3 surfers who earned enough points to go into this final event and compete for a world title. I think that would make a lot of sense. Secondly, I think that you've brought this up in the past, but events should be weighted with different point values. So it's essentially marquee events at places like Pipeline, Cloudbreak, the world-class waves in the world have, maybe 20,000 points for first place. And then beach breaks and wave pools have 10,000 points for first place. And so by the end of the season, if you perform in world-class surf, you then, have more shots accrued towards the title. So I think little things like that can be made as adjustments to, if we want to keep the finals day format, to ensure that somebody like Carissa Moore, who actually is probably the best surfer in the world this year, is reflected by the results at the end of the year.
Yeah. I don't want to take anything away from Carolyn Marks. I thought she surfed incredible. And but you're right. I mean, look, I ask you this. We know that Pipe and Sunset would be extra points, would be marquee events. Would you give Bells 10,000 points or 20,000 points?
No.
Bells is not marquee.
No,
Margaret River, marquee, yes or no?
No. But those can be 12, those could be somewhere in between. If a beach break is 10 and cloud break's 20, those venues could be 15.
Right. Okay.
I think we can sort those details out.
Maybe the wave pool is only 5,000.
Yeah, exactly. Wave pool shouldn't even be on. I mean, a wave pool is not part of the discussion, to be perfectly honest. But but again, it's not just one event, it's a legacy. Like Carissa Moore could have 7 world titles and the Olympic thing and really be deemed undeniably the greatest female surfer of all time. You know what I mean? And now she's not, because of this kind of little blip on the radar where the WSL decided to try something new without thinking it through all the way. It's a half-assed attempt is really what it is.
Do you sense that Carissa's just uninspired by lowers? Like,
oh my gosh,
last year
totally.
You could be like, okay, it was a fluke, but 2 years in a row, or is it just? I mean, it's just not a good wave for her. It's just not a good wave for her.
I disagree. Like, she dominated lowers for so many years. I think it's bigger. I think that Carissa Moore, uninspired's the best word. Carissa Moore is uninspired. You watch her performance out there and you're just like, totally predictable, totally lacking the verve that we used to see out of her. Like, she has the well-rounded enough game to win those events. I just think it's reflective of, I don't know, I don't even want to say it's reflective of a bigger life change in her personally and she's shifting. No, because she dominated the season. Like her fervor for competition and all of that seems to still be there. It's something about this event that it's just like remindful of Kelly the last few seasons on tour, where if the waves aren't good, you're just not really going to get a performance out of him. And even surfing against top level athletes that used to inspire his performances no longer do. He's outgrown that. He just needs 8-foot pumping surf, and then you'll see him level up beyond. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's strictly lowers that's not inspiring to Carissa.
Yeah, I just wonder what goes if internally she's thinking to herself, "Oh man, this is the worst of the 4 surfers I have to surf against. This spot is the worst for me and the best for them."
Yeah.
And that kind of takes some of her energy away.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it does. I mean, maybe it could just be reflective of the WSL. They're not just bungling this structure and this, world title scenario. Maybe they're bungling a lot more that we point to all the time, and she's uninspired to go show up and have all of her hard work undercut by her employer,
Does she retire?
It's a great question.
I mean, she's been on tour a long time. She's proven she has nothing left to prove, in my opinion. And, frankly, I don't want to, I'm afraid to say this and I'm going to catch, but at some point you think about other parts of your life that
Oh
might
yeah.
need to be explored, like, you know, and so maybe it, and I think that's, if you're a female, I think that's something that's more front and center than if you're a male.
Oh, I mean, undeniably, women, have the having a kid as a female athlete interrupts your competitive prowess in a way that it doesn't for men. And so we've seen Chelsea Georgeson leave in the top of her prime, Chelsea Hedges or Chelsea Georgeson, when she was, I mean, I think it was just after she won a world title, leaving in her prime. We've seen Lisa Anderson have to figure out how to juggle having a kid while on tour. Whereas on the male side, of course, they're just footloose and fancy free despite having that obligation at home oftentimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a real thing. Is if Carissa wants to be a mother, which I'm not even sure if she does or doesn't, but that would absolutely weigh into part of her decision here. And especially if, again, she is giving it her all. And I mean, look, if you are a true artist, let's say, and let's say you're a filmmaker and you feel like you've made your life's greatest work in this film, and then the studio re-edits everything and puts out a piece of garbage, you'd be pretty
Yeah.
miffed. You'd be
Yeah.
apprehensive to go back and work with that studio again. You know what I mean? And so I feel like Carissa had these 2 last years as complete legacy leaving world title years, and they got undercut by, in a poorly conceived of concept from her employer. So yeah, I think it is time for, I mean, not that I'm dictating it's time for Carissa, but I do believe that it could be in Carissa's own mind a real change of kind of what's going on in her and her life and priorities and what's going on. So it'd be sad to see her get off tour. It'd be sad to see her retire, but there could also be a second life in her career that exists off the tour that could be more inspiring.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it'll be interesting to see.
I do want to talk a little bit about the surfing on the women's side.
Yeah, for
Molly
sure.
Molly Picklum surfs really good. She is very well rounded, but lacks sizzle. I feel like I expect her to make good decisions. She's in the top 5 for a reason. I expect her to surf waves competently, but there's no wow factor in her surfing. And it's like she gets up and riding on a set wave. You're like, she made great decisions to be in this position. Boom. First turn, second turn, third turn, combos it up. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm uninspired. If I'm going to sit here for the next 30 minutes watching surfing, almost regardless of who her opponent is, I find myself rooting for the opponent just because I want to be dazzled. It's like, okay, Molly surfed that wave to a 7, but I'm not thrilled. Who's up and riding? And hopefully they're going to blow the back out of this thing because I want to see something exciting. And so that's, I think, something that Molly is, going to have to kind of work on, is a point of difference and a point of sizzle in her surfing to kind of push past 5th place, essentially.
Yeah, which surprised me the most of the women was Tyler Wright. I thought she surfed pretty damn good, man. That board, that Paizel she was on.
Yeah.
She had one wave in particular where everything flowed perfectly, and she was actually doing that top turn with speed throughout the transition. Like there was no loss of speed. That board looked great, and that's actually the best I've ever seen her surf, in my opinion.
Interesting. It's funny. I actually thought about the surfboard too. I was like, her boards look really good. But I felt, I don't know, it just felt like the old guard. It felt like watching the old guard. It felt like, maybe you're right. Maybe it's a better degree.
There was just one wave that I saw that I was like, wow, I've never seen her surf like that. Now, granted, she fell in some crucial moments but there was one wave where I was like, wow, this is really the best wave I've ever seen her surf. And, for the first time, I was like, wow, that was, because I've never really been super psyched on her surfing.
Yeah, I guess I agree with you, and I know what you're talking about because I did feel it too. And there was like a flow too, like she'd
Yeah,
bang the end section and drift through it a little bit.
Yeah,
So
she
she
looked
did look
free.
she looked a little bit more free than in the past, but I there's an element of her surfing that it looks great. It's predictable. Like I know she's going to go front side. I know that she's going to bottom turn and do an open faced carve. Like she's not going to place it in the lip. Like to be honest, she lost against Caroline Marks, and the difference was Caroline placing her turns in the lip. They both have that same cadence of like predictability. You know, they're going to get up, bottom turn, open face turn, you know, another one. But Caroline's placing those turns in the lip. And so there's kind of this big burst of spray, and there's an element of difficulty when you're doing that. And maybe it can kind of go slide or whatever. Whereas I know Tyler's going to depend on that same front side open face gouge that she always does. And so it feels like in watching the old guard do exactly what we've seen them do a bunch before, very different than when Caitlin Simmers gets up and riding, you know? So I never felt like Tyler was like on any of her waves, like she was going to win the event.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but Caroline Marks, so actually Caitlin Simmers, 4th place. This is a rookie year, by the way. She finishes 4th. She had a win at Rio. She had a win in Portugal. She had 2nd in Tahiti. It's an incredible rookie year for Caroline. Caitlin Simmers.
Caitlin was tight in this event. She didn't quite finish her maneuvers because she was tight. She wasn't flowing. My advice, in fact, this is my advice to all competitors, but for sure to people that have some anxiety before going into a heat, is get a great song in your head. Get your favorite song that you want to dance to in your head.
Wow.
And keep that song in your head. And
wow.
Because you know how to do everything. What you're lacking is a release. And so having a great song in your head, and I've done this in won events with great songs. No, like in longboard events. I used to have music in my ears when I was surfing in finals and stuff. I would literally be listening to the song.
So what's the
and
song?
I would select it. So Can't You Hear Me Knocking by the Rolling Stones.
Really?
Yeah. That's one of them.
That was your hype song.
Yeah. And then the other one was The Magnificent Seven by The Clash, that bass line. Super good.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, those two songs. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't think of those as hype songs, but it fits with what you're saying, which is I'm just cruising. Actually, I already know how to do it, so I'm just kind of in the zone cruising. That's what those songs are.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I like it, and hopefully Caitlin Simmers is listening right now, and she can use this to level up.
I'm sure she's got a Taylor Swift song or something that gets her relaxed, but something to just dance, you know, just go out there and dance and just be focused on the music and don't let all the other stuff get into your head.
Well, here's my concern for Caitlin Simmers.
Yeah.
Is what she provides to the female tour that we've not seen in a long time, or I can't even remember, is raw aggression. She's aggressive.
Yeah.
That's something that's been lacking on the female tour for a long time, right? And so that aggression I love, and the tour needs it, and it's going to require other surfers to level up to that. So my biggest concern for Caitlin is that she's going to link up with a prudent coach who tells her she needs to go 70% so that she completes her rides. They're like, hey man, you're killing it. And when you connect all the dots, it's incredible. And yeah, you've won a couple of events this year. You know what's going to help you get even more events next year? Dial it back to 70% and then complete the rides. And then hell no. So I'd prefer that she falls 30% of the time by going all out all the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because she's still winning events with falling, and she's still finding herself into the final 5, and all she's got to do is land a couple on that day, and then she'll be there. She'll be a world champ. So I really hope that Caitlin does not, like we've seen this happen before, where there is a young surfer and then they get overcoached and then they learn to dial it back. We've seen that time and time again, actually, and they become lesser versions of themselves. So I hope that Caitlin next year brings exactly what she brought this year, and I hope that she brings more of it. I hope that she's more aggressive and more intense next year.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I agree with you that if she is told to dial it back, she's not the type of surfer that knows how to do that wants to do that. And if she's forced to do that, it's a recipe for disaster.
Or it's a recipe for the Dane Reynolds of like, I'm going to get off tour then because this isn't for me.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. So the other thing here that I think was interesting that nobody's really talked about is Caroline Marks beat Caitlin Simmers in 4 incredibly important matchups throughout this year, including the finals in Tahiti. So the Caitlin Simmers West Coast versus Caroline Marks East Coast rivalry that may or may not be developing is potential, battle for the next 5 years on tour. And that brings us to Caroline, the most consistent surfer of the day, and to be honest, the best surfer of the day. Not the best surfer of the year, in my humble opinion, and still doesn't have me convinced that she's actually the best surfer in the world or that she might even win another world title. But I'm really glad for her, and she earned the title based on the criteria of the day. And by the way, I love her surfing as well. I think there's kind of a lack of movement between maneuvers, especially when she's on her backside. She just kind of gets in position when she gets to her feet, squares up off the bottom, and then just belt. And it's undeniably impressive.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think she absolutely can and will win another world title, if not multiple world titles, especially if the events are held at right-handers, because you're right, there's a rhythm that all of us get in backside, and she showed it. Once you get that first top turn and your feet are planted where you want them to be planted, it seems like going up and down the wave face backside is just kind of happens naturally for us. It must be that because our back foot is just, sort of like where the focal point of our energy is. It just bang, 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 bang. I think of Matt Wilco. I think you think of Aki. You think of all the great backside surfers, Luke Egan, and in this case, Caroline Marks. Once they get that backside rhythm going, it's hard to beat. And if a lot of the events are held in Rights, she's got a great opportunity to obviously be in the final 5. And then if it's held at, God forbid, Trestles, there's more world titles to be had. I thought she was phenomenal, and I think she peaked at the great, she started slow throughout the season, and she really kind of peaked at the right time.
My argument against what you're saying, though, is that metronome pacing cadence leaves no room for spontaneity. So it looks predictable. There's a lot of repetition in the turns, not a lot of variety of maneuvers, and so it is very cool to see. But next year, I don't think it scores as highly. And the year after that, it doesn't score as highly. So there will need to be a remix. And I think there is room for her. There is room for her to develop her surfing. And so she's going to need to find a way to remix and bring something fresh and new, because the judges are going to get tired of just seeing that same metronome off the bottom, off the top surfing over and over again.
Well, let me say this, that if you watched, and I know you did, if you watch her first turn, it's just a first turn in the hook. Her second turn is more vertical with more speed, and her fins are busted out. So now we've got 2 different turns. Her third turn, now she's got tons of speed. The wave face is generally fading out a little bit and softening. So she's a little bit more out on the wave face, doing a carve back into. So there's 3 different turns there. At least on Saturday there were. So there is some, differentiation. Yeah. Say that for me. Say
Differentiation.
that. Differentiation. Thank you. So there is some. It's not just same move, same move, same move. In my eyes, because I remember watching it and being concerned about this. It was bang, bang, fins out, then bang on the open face back into it. So yeah. Okay. But you're right. No one wants to see the same thing over and over. And
well, we'll see. But huge congrats. Again, she earned it that day, undeniably so. And it's just, again, bringing the title back to the U.S., to the mainland, is pretty epic. On the men's side, Joao Chianca in heat number 1 against Jack Robinson. What are your thoughts on Joao after this year's end?
I was more psyched on Joao earlier in the season.
Really?
I'm more psyched on Joao in Waves of Consequence.
Okay.
I think that's where he shines. Joao, to me, his style's just a little bit lacking. It doesn't look like he's dancing. It looks like he's doing maneuvers.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. He does definitely look like he's doing maneuvers, but I like his style still. And I guess what I like about it is there's so much spice to it. Like he looks just, you know,
I
like
like his fire. That's the thing, his fire, right? It's
yeah,
what's between his head that I like the most.
yeah.
That he's like, take no prisoners.
That and he's got all the talent in the world. Like the rail game's insane, the airs are insane, the big waves are insane. So when you couple that with that verve, I think that he is a gift to the tour. You know, like having him in a heat is going to demand the best from his opponent, and it just levels everything up. There's a real, and there's kind of an unpredictability to what he's going to do. Even at lowers, when he would be bottom turning, it was like he could either do the sickest power gouge or he would do a finner, you know, or a tail free turn. So I like that explosive, unexpected kind of whatever, spontaneity is the word I'm looking for. But the other thing is, even though he's the total package, I can't quite put my finger on a point of difference for him. Like when he's matched up against Ethan Ewing, which he was, Ethan's power and precision stood out. You know, it was like Joao came through a heat or two, and you're like, oh man, this guy, he's on fire. And then Ethan gets to his feet, and you go, ooh, there's a point of difference right there. Ethan is more powerful and more precise. And then if you think about him surfing against Felipe, Joao didn't surf against Felipe, but if he did, Felipe's speed stands out no matter who you put him up against. And so I'm not sure what Joao can do next year to reinvent what we've already kind of come to expect from him. But he's young. He's got incredible ability. So I feel like he can be a top 5 mainstay for years to come while he sorts out kind of what that point of difference is.
Yeah. Yeah. Look,
Well,
Ethan was obviously way better than Joao.
yeah. Well, Joao lost to, oh, I'm sorry, Jack Robinson lost to Joao in that first heat. Um, Due, in my opinion, to lack of pizzazz. Like Jack Robinson, as much as I love Jack Robinson surfing, he fell on the first couple of waves that he got up and riding on. I feel like he kind of undersurfed his best waves, and then he'd get mediocre waves and he'd do whips and spins like on a mediocre wave. You're like, okay, this guy's got all the talent in the world. Why doesn't he just apply that to a set wave? You know, or maybe it was because he fell on the first couple of waves that he got, so he was tentative once he was on a set wave. I just feel like he lost basically due to wave selection. But if you look at the top 5 competitors, you could look at Jack Robinson and be like, this guy is the world champ. The deciding factor on whether he becomes world champ at the end of the season is what locations on tour they run at. If you just look at all the top 5 surfers, I would put Jack as my pick for world champ if they ran in good surf, you know? So he's going to either have to campaign for the world tour to start running in world-class surf or really figure out how to be on the best waves of the day at mediocre spots, basically.
Yeah. I just see Jack as sort of being another, he was a victim of lower trestles, in my opinion.
Totally. Well, so he was left needing a 9.33 in that heat. And it's like, we all know Jack can get a 933. If Jack's on a set wave, he can get a 933. You know what I mean? Like he is got all that talent in the world, but yes, like you said, victim of the location and also poor wave selection. I mean, Joao ultimately beat him fair and square is what happened, but yeah.
Yeah.
Last week I said he looks kind of slow out there, and I still stand by that. Jack does, for some reason, look slow out there. But power and precision. Ethan Ewing was the standout surfer of the day to me. His surfing against Joao was insane, and I was like, oh my God, he came out of the gates swinging, but he's got Griffin Colapinto, who's got the, you know, full thrust of the beach and everything behind him and a lot of talent. And then Ethan surfing against Griff was spectacular.
That was the heat. Yeah,
It
that
was
was the heat where you
spectacular.
just went, oh my God. This is
Unbelievable.
it. Yeah.
Power, precision. It's actually impossible to put into words. I rewatched the heats yesterday because I wanted to really like
It
pinpoint.
can't be impossible to put into words.
Dude, it's
Find some
poetry in
words.
motion. It's
Poetry.
I'll tell
Dancing.
you. I'll tell you what. Richie Lovett, I think, put it pretty. He used a word efficiency.
Succinctly.
Yeah, succinctly, but it was one word. It's not comprehensive, but
Yeah.
he used the word efficiency. And I thought that was spot on. There's zero excessive body movement in Ethan Ewing. It's a perfect use of energy. There's no bobbles, there's no misplaced anything. It's a lot. He is tapping into the power of the ocean and then perfectly translating that into the movement of his surfboard with nothing out of place and maximum, and then perfect timing as well. So like the spray just goes beyond the next wave in the lineup. Like it's incredible. I really felt like he was accessing a new gear we had not seen from him before, and that we haven't even seen surfed at lowers before. And again, it made me psyched to think what Felipe was going to bring in their final matchup, knowing that they would ultimately clash.
You know what Ethan Ewing kind of reminds me of is, you go to a concert and you see like a lead guitarist, and the lead guitarist is freaking, and he's kind of all over the place. He's kind of overdoing it with everything. And then you see the bass guitarist. The big bass guitarist has just got a killer rhythm going, boom, boom. And then they put the spotlight on the bassist for a solo, and he just goes, dun, dun, boom, 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 and it's just perfectly efficient. And everyone's focused on the bass player, going, "Oh, this guy's killing it right now."
Interesting. Ethan as the bass player. I like it.
Yes, yes. Hold on for a sec.
Yeah, okay, go. I could see you squirming in your seat. I was like, maybe we need to take a break.
No, it's my dog. Okay.
Well, before we get into Ethan Ewing versus Felipe Toledo, let's talk about Griffin Colapinto, because Ethan matched with Griffin in that prior heat. The story of Griffin Colapinto leading into this event was a major story. The entire town of San Clemente getting behind him, the campaign developed by Quicksilver, the employment of Matthew McConaughey to create a promotional video for Quicksilver.
It was all the death knell of Griffin. There's just too much hype. Like if I was Griffin, I'd be like, "Stop it, you guys. Let me focus here." Now, he's got such a great attitude, and everyone loves Griffin. And look, I wanted him to win, but it almost seemed like he was destined not to win because it was too much too soon. Like, let's save the hype till after you win, and then we'll go crazy. Well,
I liked it. I mean, to be honest, I liked it. I don't know how Griff felt about it or if it did actually hinder his performance. I don't feel like it did. But in the way that Brazilian fans rally to support their athletes, I do feel like American fans have been pretty blah over their athletes for a long time.
Look, don't get me wrong. I'm okay with the enthusiasm. I just felt like as a strategy, as a competitor, I personally wouldn't want all of that on me. Like it's just too much. I'd rather be the guy that no one's like Ethan. Like no one was even considering him.
Totally.
He was like, "Oh, Ethan's in it? Okay, whatever." But again, I do agree with you. I enjoyed the enthusiasm. I thought I'm stoked for the city of San Clemente. Like, I just felt like they might have done a disservice to him.
Well, it's easy to say in hindsight that if you don't actually deliver on everybody's expectations, then it really does feel like a kind of extra big letdown. All the printing expense. How much did Matthew McConaughey charge for that? Like it really felt. And the other thing was it all came together, I feel like, in 72 hours. Like if they had dropped that Matthew McConaughey video a month prior, you could have got the mileage out of it. But it's like that video came out a day before the event. And so then a lot of people were witnessing the video after the event had already finished. And it's like, oh, Griff didn't deliver. Then there's a little bit of a weird, like, oh, that didn't age well, basically.
And the boat out there had to immediately pull the Griffin for world champ sign off the side of the boat.
Exactly. What was weird is in that McConaughey hype reel, he says, Griff, you might find yourself vying for a world title, needing an 8.93. That's the exact score that Griffin ended up needing against Ethan Ewing.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But look, Griffin surfed amazingly. He came up short against Ethan Ewing.
Yeah. His
Ethan's
first wave was great. I mean, that first left that he caught, I don't even know if it went in his score line, but it was like you immediately went, okay, this is going to be good. Griff's on his game, you know?
I don't know. Yes, 100%. The difference though between those two surfers was Griffin looks spry, but he looks like an adolescent compared to Ethan Ewing, who looks like a man.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means.
Ethan Ewing's next level.
Ethan just really, did not, nobody expected. We didn't even really discuss him. I think last week we wrote him off. I certainly did. Just like, he's coming off of injury. No point in discussing him. And this is the best surfing we've ever seen from him.
Yeah, Baldy told me that Ethan Ewing he was like, look out for Ethan Ewing, dude. He's looking insane. So,
and then of course, after Ethan gets through Griffin Colapinto, he meets Felipe Toledo for a best of 3 matchup. And Felipe Toledo did exactly what we all anticipated Felipe Toledo can do. And I already kind of mentioned it earlier, but variety was the difference. Ethan Ewing, we had seen him surf in, I don't know, 2 previous heats. 2 previous heats, I think. And ride probably 10 excellent waves in those 2 heats. And so it's on rail. We've come to expect it. He did it again against Felipe. Felipe did equally as big of carves and then threw air rotations into the mix. So variety was what won the day, I think, for Felipe Toledo.
can we talk about what's really fascinating, which isn't Felipe Toledo, but which is Kelly Slater's hip surgery, just taking all the air out of the Felipe Toledo victory?
He tried. I don't feel like he did take the air out, but it was an attempt.
Kelly Slater hip surgery announcement happens. It's just so great. It's like, hey, I'm here and I'm not leaving. He's had a labrum reconstruction. It removed some scar tissue. The bone spurs on the femoral head, shaved the socket joint, and removed bone pieces and foreign objects floating in Kelly Slater's hip joint. A significant surgery, 3 months out of the water. He's going to be back. He's going to keep an eye on his physical therapy and his dietary intake, of course. Lots of deep tissue massage and maybe some other protocols, including PRP and maybe stem cells. I'll look into it, is what he said. Which is all that whole PRP stem cell thing is like, if that was just available to the average guy, we'd all be so much healthier. You know, like, just give me the shot. I know it's illegal, but I'll fly to Venezuela or wherever. I got to go to Costa Rica to get the shot. But yeah, anyway, Kelly Slater.
So
Is he retired?
No, I don't know. No. I'm going to say no. He's not retired.
Will he ever retire? Do you think he will ever retire?
No.
Do you think there will ever be, like, when he's like 70, he'll be like, all right, I'm hanging it up?
Nope, I don't. I mean, honestly, I don't think that he will continue to surf in every event throughout the season, but I see him doing a slow transition into surfing the best events of the season via a wild card spot. Like, if the waves are pumping in Tahiti, he's going to show up and they're going to give him a wild card.
Yeah.
You know?
All right.
But I don't see him mustering the courage necessary or the passion to surf Ranch, to be honest, you know?
Yeah.
He's never been a threat at Surf Ranch. And then obviously Brazil, he hasn't gone to ever. So events like that, he's not going to waste his time on, but I see him still wanting to surf the best waves in the world against top level surfers. But Felipe Toledo, dude, I mean, 2 years in a row, back to back. What are your thoughts on Felipe? Will we see him again next year? Does he have any relevance if finals day is not held at Lowers next year?
I'm not. Felipe Toledo doesn't excite me. I'm just being honest. You know,
Yeah.
like, I'm not taking away any. He's an incredible surfer, but I don't sense that he reminds me. He's kind of like. He's like Steph Curry. He's kind of unstoppable. Like, he can just drain 75 three-pointers from half court. And actually, Steph Curry excites me. But I guess what I'm getting at is that his performances are so sporting.
Yeah.
And so they're just, it's his dance that lacks.
Yeah.
I don't, I just sense that he's out there to score points. And I don't think he's dancing.
Yeah.
And he surfs incredible. And if you know, I'm just, for whatever reason, and it's just me, it has nothing to do with him. This is all about me. And I like the spontaneity of, you know, of these other guys. Like, I guess I like watching Rob Machado surf. I like watching Tom Curran surf. I like watching Ethan Ewing surf. I really like watching the Goofy Foot Clay Marzo. There's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
guys that I'd rather watch surf, and I'm not excited about a heat with Felipe Toledo coming up. Like, I'm rarely like, oh, yeah, I'm going to watch the Felipe heat. I'm like, no, I want to watch the Ethan Ewing versus, Yago Dora. I want to watch Yago Dora versus Ethan Ewing. By the way, I think Yago Dora would
Yeah,
be,
I hear you.
yeah,
The context in which you were raised and you've had all of your surf experience is the polar opposite to that in which Felipe was raised. Felipe was raised in this NASCAR environment where you put the biggest stickers you can on your board and you shave seconds off the lap. And so he is the best at doing that, and it's just,
yeah.
it's hard to relate to for guys like yourself. And I relate to what you're talking about as well.
Yeah.
So it's
But again,
impressive to
I don't
see,
want to
but
take anything away from him because he's our world champion. He's insane and he deserves to be the world champion.
but
I'm just,
I don't,
I'm
I
just
think
not
that's it.
excited. I'm not excited about it.
So I think that's exactly it. As you said, he's our world champion. I don't know that he is. Like this isn't ours anymore. Like the version of what they're doing that was exemplified through his surfing on that day isn't really what you and I identify as surfing. And even though we wanted to embrace competitive surfing for a long time, it could have gone one of two ways, and it went the opposite way that we would hope was reflective of an actual surf experience. And now that it's just trying to be sport so hard, when it was trying to be surfing, but we're going to create a couple of rules that figure out who the best surfer is on the day, we were still in. It abandoned all of that and now is just trying to become sport. All of the uniqueness that made it surfing has been washed away, and now it's just trying to make it objectively like every other sport on the planet. And so you and I don't relate to it anymore. So is he, quote, our champion? I don't know. No, I don't really think so, because he won't surf. He won't paddle into a wave in Tahiti, but he'll sit on the shoulder at Pipeline. But
Yeah.
is he the World Surfing League's champion? Undeniably. He is their guy, like he does their thing the best. It's just
Yeah.
not our thing.
Yeah.
So,
That's a great way to put it. He does their thing the best. It's just not our thing. That's exactly it.
yeah.
Hey,
Well,
I've got a hard out. Let me tell you real quick. The wave pool in Oceanside, for the Southern California listeners, it was put on hold. It's called Ocean Camp. It is being built, and it looks like they're going to be open. The pool is actually going to be built in 2025. It should be open in 26. I know that's, sounds really like, that sounds like a wave pool timeline we've all heard before, but but literally, like, they've got graders out on the land. They're like grading the land, like the development's happening. It's a 92-acre parcel, and the 700 housing units as part of the California Lifestyle Community Development, which is good news for all the surfers in Oceanside and around here, and basically all of Southern California, that have been waiting for that thing was on the docket for a while, and it looks like it's moving forward.
interesting.
Hey,
Yeah.
another thing,
Yeah.
the boardroom show.
Mm.
Ben Gravy autograph signing. Ben Gravy got a booth. He's got a new line of hard foam surfboards, and the Ben Gravy autograph signings both days. So if you're a fan of the YouTube influencer Ben Gravy, and who isn't, super cool guy, come out and meet Ben Gravy. Tom Curran and Pat Curran, Tom's son, playing music. There's a book signing with Tom Curran and Jimmy Medico around the Shaping Surf History book that Jimmy Medico put out, Tom Curran and Al Merrick, 1980 to 1983. There's also a boardroom talks discussion in which Jamie Brisick is moderating with Jimmy Medico and Tom Curran. There's the boardroom talks Flying on Water, a surf foil discussion with foil industry experts. There's a boardroom talks War and Peace, Kelly Slater and Andy Irons, a talk story photo exhibit with Steve Sherman at his booth. And a boardroom talks Ricky Rossi and Vince Longo from Future Fins talk about fin validation through computational fluid dynamics. And all of those boardroom talks at the Boardroom Show October 7th and 8th, among other things.
Amazing. We will be there. Also, let's just give a moment to shout out the Shaper rankings that the WSL and Vissla put together this year for the CT.
Yes.
Since we're talking about surfboard builders.
Great point.
All of the top 5 ranked Shapers were represented on finals day. Mayhem actually won the first place position in the Shaper rankings, and he had Caroline Marks, world champ, Griffin Colapinto, and Carissa Moore riding his boards at lowers. Sharp Eye, Marcio Zuvi and the team at Sharp Eye had Felipe Toledo, world champ, and Jack Robinson riding his boards. DHD had Molly Picklum and Ethan Ewing. Paizel had Tyler Wright, and Channel Islands has Joao Chianca. They've been working on that board with Joao, the 2-point pro is what they're calling that board. And really, that board's looked lively under Joao's feet throughout, especially the beginning of the season. He came out hot and heavy on that thing, and they've been refining it. And I know Britt was with him at lowers all week long, working on boards. They had an asymmetrical board that Joao was riding out there. So congrats to all those Shapers. And then there was one surfer riding Chris Borst's surfboards as well, and that was, of course, Caitlin Simmers. So shout out to all those Shapers and their contributions to the pointy thruster and high-performance surfing.
Yeah. If you can ride one of those boards, more power to you. If not, come to the Boardroom Show. We've got boards that we can all actually ride.
I know. And some of those guys will be there too, right? So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Big and congratulations to all those guys, all those Shapers. They're all good guys and friends of mine, and I'm stoked for them. And I actually I reached out to Matt. I'm like, hey, is the WCT giving you an award or anything? Because I was thinking, man, maybe we should just do an awards thing at the Boardroom Show. But apparently they're going to do something at the first event of the year at Pipeline. They're going to announce the Shapers winners, I think.
Okay,
that's
cool.
what I think. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Well, you said you have a heart out. Do you actually have to go right now, or can I give you one more segment?
No, I got to go right now. I have a 9:15.
Okay, go for it. I'll give you the
I do have other segments we can do next week for sure.
Save them.
Okay. Because I have some other stuff too. But yeah, I got a heart out at 9:15. I apologize.
That's all right. We'll sign us off then.
Oh, sorry. Hey, until next time, adios and aloha.